Are you type 2 diabetic? Research now proves that type 2 diabetes can be reversed. Are you taking drugs like metformin, glipizide, Januvia, other diabetic medications, or even insulin? Are your doctors now continuing to put you on more and more medications, but you still find yourself getting worse, not better? Are you now on cholesterol or blood pressure medications? Are you finding it difficult to lose weight and have energy? If you have type 2 diabetes, you have an opportunity to get out of this scenario. Diabetes is reversible. At Advanced Functional Medicine, we have successfully treated several thousand type 2 diabetics, and most diabetics seem to have a very similar story. It goes like this. You were diagnosed diabetic and you had no idea you were diabetic in the first place. For most of you, it was a surprise. Whether you went to see your doctor for a routine visit or had a completely unrelated issue, whatever it was, at some point you sat in front of your physician and he told you, you have type 2 diabetes. Many of you were taken aback by that, and that's the way it's been described to me by most of our patients, as if before your doctor would even tell you what it means to be a diabetic, he just pulled out his prescription pad and he started tearing off what would be your very first prescription for diabetes. Usually, that first drug you're given is a drug called metformin. The maximum dose for metformin is 2,000 milligrams per day, but the doctor normally doesn't start you on that, but he'll start you at about half the max dose, which is 1,000 milligrams per day, and then you're going to be told a few things. You're going to be told to take this medication, try to lose weight, eat better, exercise, and we'll check back in with you in about 6 months. So patients try doing this. You start taking your medications, you become a little bit more mindful of the foods that you're consuming. Some may try to exercise a little bit, but at some point you go back to your doctor and something always seems to happen to just about every diabetic. They're sitting in front of their physician and they're told that their numbers are still coming up again. And your doctor's going to have to make a few more changes to what he's doing. So what does your doctor mean when he says make changes? Well, more medication. So maybe he bumps your dose of metformin up to 2,000 milligrams per day. Maybe for some of you, he's already talking about adding a second oral diabetic drug. Maybe it's glipizide, maybe it's Januvia, whatever the drug of choice is for your doctor at that time. And you'll be told the same thing. You're told take these medications, try harder to lose weight, eat better, exercise more, and we'll see you again in another 6 months. And eventually, if you're put on enough blood sugar medication, your numbers may be holding in an area where your physician thinks is reasonable. But then something else seems to happen to many diabetics. Your doctor may say, your blood sugar numbers look okay, so we'll keep watching those, but now your cholesterol is coming up, or your blood pressure is rising. So I'm going to need to make a few more changes. And again, what does your doctor mean? More medications. So now maybe you're on a cholesterol lowering medication, you're on a blood pressure medication, you're on 2 oral diabetic medication. So it started off on 0 for many of you, in a short amount of time became 4 medications for diabetes. The research refers to this as the diabetic cocktail because 80% of diabetics are on at least 4 drugs. Some patients are on 10 or more medications because of diabetes. They're on 2 or 3 blood sugar medications, maybe insulin at some point, 2 or 3 blood pressure medications, a few cholesterol medications, a diuretic, a beta blocker, something for the kidneys like lisinopril, or other drugs for fatty liver disease, and so on and so forth. So it really adds up for many of you very quickly. So diabetes is what the research calls the silent killer, because most diabetics have no symptoms, and the damage that's being done in the body is being done without them knowing about it. But before moving on, we really need to take a closer look at diabetes to figure out what the danger is indeed with it. So diabetes is not so much a blood sugar problem as it ends up becoming a blood vessel problem. And this is where the real complications arise with type 2 diabetics. Elevated blood sugar causes blood vessels to begin to break down or deteriorate very rapidly in the body. So if you're destroying your blood vessels to the heart and the brain, this leads to heart attacks or strokes, which is the leading cause of death for diabetics. The National Institute of Health is telling us that 2 out of every 3 people with diabetes will suffer from either a heart attack or a stroke sometime during the course of their disease. Now, if you're destroying blood vessels in the kidneys, that's called renal failure or kidney failure, which can lead to dialysis. When the blood vessels to the eyes are breaking down, that leads to changes in vision, blurred vision, or blindness for some. When the blood vessels to the nerves of the feet and the hands break down, this is neuropathy, or an amputation if it becomes severe. Alzheimer's disease is another big topic in the research with diabetics. There's such an intimate relationship between a type 2 diabetic and the development of early onset Alzheimer's disease that Alzheimer's is being recategorized as type 3 diabetes. And these are the reasons they develop these horrible, life-shortening complications. But the typical way in which a diabetic is counseled through the entire course of their disease is that they're told to simply take medications, lose weight, eat better, exercise more. This is unfortunately old medicine. For instance, if you're having trouble losing weight, it was once thought that weight gain caused diabetes, and many think this is still true. That couldn't be further from the truth. Diabetes is actually what causes weight gain. Weight gain is a symptom of the diabetic process. It is not the other way around. As a diabetic, you're also told to eat better, but you're never taught how to do this. And the info that you've been given is always very outdated, and it becomes very frustrating when you're not getting results. The same dietary information that was given to diabetic patients in the mid-1980s, early 1990s is still being given today. Although leaps and bounds have been made in nutritional research since then, I assure you this. You're also told to exercise. Now, this might sound a little counterintuitive to what you've been taught your entire adult life, but if you have type 2 diabetes, many of you should not be exercising. Not yet, anyway. Exercise can elevate your numbers if you're unhealthy, which will aggravate and accelerate this disease. We have got to fix that diabetic process before you can safely exercise. But many of you are told blindly to simply just do it. Now, the World Health Organization came out with an article that states, out of all the medications produced in the world, the United States consumes 75% of them. That's a huge number. The United States makes up less than 5% of the world's population, but we take 75% of the drugs. So according to the World Health Organization, the United States ranked 36th in health compared to the rest of the countries in the world. We fell behind Costa Rica and other underdeveloped countries that don't have access to clean drinking water or proper antibiotics for simple infections. So what is going on? Why are we so sick in this country? What is happening? Everything is processed, it's packaged, it's full of sugar, high fructose corn syrup, shelf life enhancers, preservatives, food colorings, food dyes, chemicals. Our meats are full of hormones and antibiotics. Our fruits and vegetables have pesticides, insecticides, fungicides, herbicides. These are disease-causing chemicals. Do you know the #1 ingredient they add to food to make it more addicting? It's sugar. So what else is causing our lack of health? Medications. But aren't the drugs supposed to be the thing that cure us of our ailments? Perhaps, or perhaps it isn't the solution we once thought, especially for type 2 diabetes. So who starts influencing your doctor as early as medical school? Pharmaceutical companies. From the time a doctor takes his board exams to the time he starts practicing, those drugs that he learned about have all changed. So who is teaching your doctor about all the new drugs? Is it other doctors? No, it's usually the pharmaceutical sales representatives, who are salespeople. You'll be surprised how much influence a salesperson has on the drugs you're taking right now. 1 out of every 3 commercials on late night television is a drug commercial. It's a $1 trillion industry with no signs of slowing down. So what else is causing the decline in health? Many will say insurance companies. You're paying more and you're receiving less. Managed healthcare systems, HMOs, PPOs, Medicare, they've destroyed true healthcare in this country. It's not healthcare anymore, it's sick care. We get limited testing, abbreviated doctor's visits, over-reliance on chemical drugs end up shortening the life of the patients, not extending it. So why are you diabetic? Many diabetics have a misunderstanding of their disease. What organ in your body do you feel is most involved with your type 2 diabetes? Most people would say the pancreas. If you're a type 1 diabetic, there is something wrong with your pancreas. But if you're a type 2 diabetic, would it surprise you to know there's likely nothing wrong with your pancreas at all? So what is happening when you're a diabetic? Well, everything you eat gets broken down into glucose. It's the end product of all metabolism. Glucose gets into the bloodstream, it circulates through the entire body, it triggers our pancreas to secrete a little insulin, which goes around and binds to all of our cells and allows glucose to enter in. Remember, we're made up of hundreds of billions of cells. They collectively form our tissues and our organ systems, but at the cellular level, we're all cells. All those cells need glucose to make ATP. It stands for adenosine triphosphate, and it's what we really run on. It's our true energy. We can't walk, we can't talk, we can't breathe or function without the production of ATP. So insulin binds to our cells and allows that cell to open up and accept glucose into the cells so it can make ATP. So when you're a type 2 diabetic, there's nothing wrong with the pancreas. It is the cells that don't respond well to insulin. That's the problem. This is called insulin resistance. It means your cell receptor sites have started to function abnormally. They're essentially clogged with inflammation, with fat, with cholesterol, toxins, sugar. For many of you, they simply need to be unclogged or detoxed. The same thing happens when you're driving in a car down a freeway. If you're driving down a freeway and they start closing off all the exit ramps, what happens to the freeway? It backs up. You have traffic congestion. That's the same thing that's going on in your bloodstream. The glucose can't get into your cells fast enough, so it backs up in the blood. Either those cells aren't responding or they're taking a very long time to find an open cell receptor site to get the glucose into the cell. So this is why you have high blood sugar. So this is what your doctor sees. He looks at your blood chemistry and he says, oh my goodness, you're getting high blood sugar. You have type 2 diabetes. The doctor will almost immediately give you drugs. Many of these drugs are in a category called secretagogues. Now, the job of a secretagogue is to make the pancreas work harder and harder and harder so that you secrete out more and more insulin, thinking that's the solution. And sure, insulin will do its job. It'll start pulling the glucose out of the blood. And that's why when you take oral diabetic medication and you take your blood sugar reading a few hours later, you'll see that the blood sugar numbers do come down. So you think, hey, great, the medication's working. But the problem is that the drugs do nothing to open up or to unclog those cell receptor sites. They do nothing for insulin resistance. So the more you stimulate the pancreas, the more sugar it's pulling out of the blood, but it still can't get into the cell efficiently. So if the glucose isn't in the blood anymore, and it's not getting into the cell either, where does it go? Well, the body converts it. It converts it very rapidly and very efficiently to two things: fat and cholesterol. Your body has now effectively turned itself into a fat and cholesterol making machine. And this is why many diabetics begin to put on weight, or they produce larger amounts of cholesterol. And your doctor will see that cholesterol and will put you on drugs like simvastatin, atorvastatin, or Lipitor. But what is one of the side effects of a cholesterol-lowering drug? It's insulin resistance, which makes your diabetes worse, which causes you to create more fat and more cholesterol. And that's why many of you started off on a very low dose of cholesterol medication, maybe 10 milligrams, which turned into 20, and then 40, and some might even be on 80 milligrams of a statin drug. But the more fat and cholesterol you create, the more it accumulates, and that begins to narrow the arteries, which makes your heart need to work harder, and your blood pressure comes up, and now you find yourself on blood pressure medications. And now, to protect your kidneys, you may be given drugs like lisinopril or losartan. But the big thing to remember is the more insulin you secrete, whether it's because you're taking oral diabetic medications that are making your pancreas pump out more and more insulin, or because you're now using injectable insulin, the more insulin resistant the body becomes. So the more insulin you secrete, the more diabetic you are becoming. The drugs can make it worse over time. This is exactly why you started on very little medication. Maybe it was 500 or 1,000 milligrams of metformin, which became 2,000 milligrams of metformin. And when that wasn't working anymore, your doctor added glipizide. Maybe it was a small dose. Then it went to 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams twice per day. So this is why the conventional approach of take medications, lose weight, eat better, and exercise are not working. You're taking more and more medications, which are making you more and more insulin resistant, which require more medications. You are told to lose weight, but you're swimming upstream because your body is now essentially a fat and cholesterol making machine. You're told to eat better, but you're never told how to do this, or you're never tested on how to do this. You're told to exercise, but here's the thing. If you're not getting glucose into your cell and you can't make ATP, you don't have energy to exercise. The energy for many is simply not being generated. It has to do with biochemistry. It's not the fault of the diabetic. Diabetes is what's called a biopsychosocial disease. Bio, meaning it affects your biology. You're not creating ATP or energy because of insulin resistance, which leaves you feeling fatigued and tired. This in turn affects your psychology, because you begin to think, what's wrong with me? I can't lose the weight. I don't have energy. I don't feel good. And that affects your social life. You aren't doing the things you once thought you would, or you aren't doing the things that you love to do anymore. So, is there a different approach for diabetes? Diabetes is reversible. With functional medicine, reversing diabetes is a reality. To reverse diabetes, you have to find out what's driving it to begin with. Elevated blood sugar is just a symptom. It is not diabetes itself. Diabetes is caused by mechanisms in the body that allow blood sugar to become unregulated. Everyone watching this video was able to regulate their blood sugar at some point in their life just fine. Now you cannot do that anymore. So what happened to you? We need to find out. If you don't look for it, you're never going to find it. When you're dealing with a chronic degenerative disease, you have to look at every possible way to test the patient. You have to do a comprehensive blood analysis. If you're not able to look at every system in the body, you'll never find out what is wrong. This is where the conventional healthcare system fails. If you're diabetic and you have unregulated blood sugar, something is wrong. The key to fixing it is to find it. We have to look at every aspect of the body to find out what is causing your insulin resistance. We run a full, multifaceted blood chemistry on all of our patients and find the root cause of the issue. There is an underlying causal factor for diabetes, and it's usually different based upon the uniqueness of the individual. We also run a food sensitivity test. We need to find out what foods you're eating that are driving the inflammatory process. There are so many diets out there that are not working for people. That's because new research says you must eat towards your own individual immune system to lose weight and have normal blood sugar, not simply cut calories and avoid sugar. We don't tell our patients to cut calories. Cutting calories makes you more insulin resistant. You find out what foods react negatively to the body's immune system, and you take those foods out of the diet. And you will lose weight, and you have normal blood sugar very, very quickly. Your body has a metabolic set point for weight and blood sugar. When you start eating towards your own personal physiology, you will reach that set point very quickly. This is called individualized medicine. Blood sugar problems are really just the tip of the iceberg, and we can treat the blood sugar all we want, but diabetes doesn't live there, and neither does the solution. Diabetes lives below, in the individual causal factors that have allowed your blood sugar to become unregulated, that have allowed you to become insulin resistant. We have to treat the problem of insulin resistance and leave the symptoms alone. They will resolve. What we see after treating patients, energy through the roof. Patients say, I feel like a teenager again. This is because they lose the insulin resistance and they make ATP, which is your energy again. Patients begin to walk completely away from the disease, oftentimes with fasting glucose numbers under 100, an A1C reading safely in the 5s, and they're on 0 medication. Here's an example of a patient I had that had severely out of control diabetes. His fasting glucose numbers were approaching 300, his A1C was a 14.1, and his cholesterol and triglycerides were severely out of control, and he was on multiple medications for diabetes. When we began treatment with him, I retested this blood chemistry 45 days later, and in 45 days we got the fasting glucose down to almost normal. The A1C was at an 8.8. The cholesterol and triglycerides have totally normalized out, and he was able to reduce many of his medications. But we continued care with him, and in 45 days, we got that A1C down to a 5.5, which was completely normal. He was able to get off all of his medications. I also took his blood pressure that day. It was 126/84. He told us this was the best blood pressure that he's been able to have in 10 years. Here is an example of another patient I had with complaints of prediabetes. He had an elevated fasting glucose and an A1C of a 6.3, and he was worried about it progressing. So we started him on treatment, and in 45 days we got that A1C down to a 5.4. And as his energy started to come back and as he was feeling good and losing weight, he wanted to continue care. So in 45 days we ran that A1C again, and we were able to get it down to a 4.9. So when he presented, he weighed in at 241 pounds. And less than 5 months later, he had his diabetes totally resolved. He's on 0 medication, and his weight is now stable at 188. But this has to be a priority. Your health must be your #1 priority. We now have a unique opportunity for a select amount of patients to be a part of an outpatient program with our clinic, so you can receive these same results without traveling to our office or needing all the testing. We are a very busy clinic and only have a limited amount of these at-home programs. When I work with private patients directly at the clinic, I charge $7,900 for a 6-month full diabetic reversal program. That's out of reach for many. So what I've done is created an at-home, do-it-yourself 12-week program, so you can receive the same results we see in the office at a fraction of the cost. We've gotten this down to a science, so you can know exactly what you need to recover from this illness based upon the thousands of patients we've already seen. We've done the hard work for you. This 12-week do-it-yourself program contains everything you need so you can easily follow it with very little effort. In fact, I'm going to have you take your blood sugar readings every day so you can see your blood sugar improving on a daily basis from the moment you start this program. This 12-week program will be divided into 2 easy parts. The first part is a 28-day insulin resistance cleanse. We're going to eliminate a few of the most common inflammatory foods from your diet so you can allow your body to detoxify and heal. Along with this, you will be provided with 4 medical-grade supplements, including a powder to make shakes with that help your body naturally cleanse toxins, excess blood fat, cholesterol, glucose, but most importantly, this will allow your insulin cell receptor sites to regenerate and function normally again, so you can regulate glucose naturally. This will also support your liver, gallbladder, and GI tract so you can begin to lose excess body fat very easily. It's amazingly effective. The second part will allow you to add back many of the foods we've eliminated during the cleanse, as your body will be ready to handle them again. We will also provide you with the 5 medical-grade supplements needed that further reduce insulin resistance, reduce inflammation, support your adrenal glands, so you can regulate glucose normally and naturally again. It is important that you take your blood sugar readings daily. As your blood sugar numbers begin to reduce, you will want to call your doctor to see which medications you can reduce and eliminate as a result. This 12-week at-home package contains all the products and instructions you need for the full 3-month program. The cost is only $997. That's thousands less than what private patients pay.
Just click the link below to enter your contact and payment information. We will send you an immediate confirmation email, and you will receive your package in 2 to 7 business days, depending on your proximity to California. You can email us anytime for customer support at support@afmsd.com. This is a limited time offer, so I urge you to click the link below so you can make this disease a thing of the past.